Have you ever experienced this? This is a landscape design where plants are properly spaced. Proper plant spacing is so important for long-term plant health, but if you are in a hurry to have a more finished look in your landscape, there are some strategies you can apply. I'm going to quickly premise this whole video by saying that I don't have any perfect solution to this problem. I have design strategies for you. You're trying to make your yard look nice as soon as possible. You're trying to save as much money as you can on your landscaping project, and you want to do what's best for the health of the plants. There's no avoiding the balance of these factors. So I have about 7 different design strategies to share with you today. They are not hacks, they're strategies. Consider them and apply them in any combination that works well for you. Tip number 1 is to consider incorporating more annual plants strategically as a filler. Annual plants complete their life cycle in 1 year, right? So they start from a seed, they grow, they flower, they produce seed, and then they die at the end of the season. Some annual plants will grow to be quite large in a single season. Some annual plants will bloom for months. It's kind of like this design strategy is playing to the strengths of different plant life cycles. Annual plants fill in space quickly and create a ton of blooms while you're waiting for lower maintenance plants like your perennials and your shrubs to fill in. They can also be pretty affordable to grow if instead of buying annual plants from a nursery, you have a little bit of time to invest in growing them from seed, planting them out on your own. I don't typically recommend using annual plants in landscape design because they're a little bit more work, right? Than, perennial plants that are going to come back every year. Then you have shrubs, all of these things. You plant them once, then they fill in, they stay there over time. So it's a little bit of a trade-off, right? You are spending more time and energy adding these annual plants just as a temporary filler until the low maintenance plants in your landscape fill in a little bit more. Remember that the principles right plant, right place still apply. And if you'd like a checklist to help you make sure that you're not forgetting any of the factors that you need to consider to make sure you're putting the right plant in the right place, I have this in my mini course. It's a free mini course called How to Choose the Perfect Plant, which I created to help people put the right plant in the right place. So there's a link to that in the description below if you're interested. Be sure to plan for the factors on this checklist, like mature height, for example. Some annual plants can get to be really big and you don't want them to take up too much space and start competing with the other plants in your landscape too much. Also consider that there are annuals that will bloom really early, there are some that will bloom a little bit later, so you can plan out a little bit of a bloom time calendar if you'd like with these annual plants to extend the season. Tip number 2 applies better if you're still kind of in the design phase, if you don't already have an established landscape, but it is to design a landscape where the plants and the gardens aren't the main focus of the design. And this is kind of against my nature in a lot of ways because I love designing very plant-heavy landscapes, and I encourage you to plant yards that are like ecosystems and full of native trees and shrubs and wildlife habitat, food-producing trees and shrubs, all these happy things. But it is definitely worth mentioning in this video that if plants are the accents but not the main focus of the design, it won't be as jarring if the plants are, super tiny when you first install the landscape. This is why a lot of the more transformational gardening, TV shows, before and after pictures, they include a lot of hardscaping and other elements in the landscape besides plants. And if you pay attention, you'll start to notice this. Enjoy these really fun sources of gardening inspiration and just notice how they create these overnight transformations. How do they fill in space overnight? It is important to remember, though, that these overnight transformations are not always that realistic, especially if you're kind of the do-it-yourselfer or if you have a more limited budget. It can be really difficult to achieve this overnight transformation look. And if you want to learn a little bit more about this, I even have a whole video on this topic. So I'm going to save you all the rant right now. Go check out that video. I'll link to it in the corner of this video right now, as well as in the description below. However, you can also design a landscape that isn't just a solid garden by focusing on how you want to spend time in the landscape, how you want to use the landscape first and foremost. This can also make it a lot easier to break up a big space that you might have and you're just not sure what to do with it, how to design it. Start by thinking about how you want to spend time in the landscape, what activities you want to do. Design that first and then fill the plants in around that as accents. Plants can be an important activity in the landscape. They can be a focal point. They can be a main focus. They can also be the accent to some other element. There are endless ways that you can apply this, and I actually, again, have another whole video where I talk about focusing on use first in your design. So again, I'll link to that in the top right corner and in the description below. But there are so many different ways that this can help you break up the landscape a little bit. Even something as simple as adding a pathway to a garden bed can increase the visual interest, give you something to focus on, break it up a bit so you're not just looking at the plants, and it gives you this opportunity to interact with the landscape in a new way. The possibilities are endless here. Do some brainstorming, come up with different creative ways that you can interact with this space more and simultaneously increase the visual interest. Similar to the above tip in some ways, if you think about it, consider adding more artwork or even some containers of plants to the space. Adding a few flower pots to an otherwise small or bare landscape can really help fill in the space temporarily, right? Just keep in mind that these are going to need watered more frequently than the rest of your landscape. Imagine if you were just designing your landscape to make it more interesting with a couple of containers strategically. Where would you place them? How would you make them look balanced? And then design the rest of your landscaping, long-term landscaping around that. See if you can fit it together like a puzzle so that at a certain point you could take away these containers as the other plants fill in. Artwork or other features, maybe even more interactive features like bird baths, for example, can really help fill in the space as well and create focal points. Tip number 4 is to upgrade plant size strategically and to plant in phases. And I know you didn't come here to hear me tell you to spend more money on plants, buy bigger plants. That's the most obvious thing ever, right? What I'm saying is that if you have multiple years to invest in improving your landscape, consider shifting the budget just a little bit, shifting the focus of your budget. Invest more in the backbone plants of the landscape, the focal point plants at first. Spending a little bit more money upgrading the initial size of these important plants can give your landscape a more finished look from the beginning. These can be the biggest plants in your landscape, perhaps, like in your design, perhaps. It could be the trees, the bushes, the evergreen plants that will fill in the most space in the winter. It's up to you to decide what you want to prioritize, anything you want to invest more in so that they look bigger sooner. You could even make a copy of your design plan in pencil and literally erase plants, working backwards in order of importance and prioritize this way. Once you find these priority plants, upgrade them and spend whatever, once you upgrade them, spend your remaining budget on what you can, working maybe down in importance or mature size. Of course, plants grow, and many times smaller size plants will catch up to the larger ones in just the first few years, right? So you can always save money if you're willing to embrace this in-between phase and be patient. But some people do want to spend more money to have bigger plants that stand out a bit more sooner. That's up to you. But this is a great strategy. Just do a little bit of prioritizing, focus on these most important plants first, shift your budget there. The rest of the details, the color, the pops of color, the ground cover plants, these can come a little bit later. Up to you. Great for so many reasons. Perhaps the best tip I have for you today is to plan your design project in phases. This can be simple, really simple, or it can become really complicated. It depends how much time you want to spend on this planning process. Imagine if you started your design project just focusing on the aspects that need the most time to fill in, or perhaps the plants that are going to take the longest to fill in. Could you create an intermediary design where you start by just planting the accent tree and a little teeny bed around that accent tree, and maybe start the privacy plants along the edge of the fence, right? Then the next year you could expand the bed that's around the tree to include some more shrubs. Then you could expand this bed to connect this bed to the privacy plants along the edge of the fence in the third year, fill in more of the details then. This is just one random example to demonstrate this overall concept. Instead of planting all at once, your landscape can grow as your plants grow. And there are other benefits to breaking down a project like this into multiple phases. Especially if you're a do-it-yourselfer, right? It can be easier to have these little bite-sized steps to take year after year to improve your landscape over time. Tip number 6 is to plant more native plants. And I know you have heard this probably a bajillion times if you are a gardener, the importance of planting native plants. It sounds like the most obvious tip in the world to some, but you would be so surprised how infrequently this is used. I mean, in this particular example, native plants are a little bit more affordable. That's a good thing across the board. So if you can substitute out some plants for native plants in your landscape, that means that for the same budget, you can upgrade the size of the plants. And then that's not, of course, all of the other benefits of planting native plants. It's a good thing to do. Even with native plants, remember that right plant, right place still applies. So, not all native plants will do well in the exact environment that's your yard. They might be better suited to a slightly different local environment. So just remember to do that additional research. This still applies. My next tip is to add something ugly to your landscaping. And I know you don't want to hear me say that we need to embrace the fact that gardening and landscaping is a slow process. I know you don't want to hear that, but it is supposed to be a slow process. We have a lot to learn from plants, and it's not just values like patience is a virtue. Obviously, like, patience is a good thing, and being invested in the landscape and being patient can make it more rewarding, of course. But there are values that reflect bigger aspects of cultures, who we are as people, things considered normal that maybe shouldn't be, lessons we can learn from plants. For example, what values are encapsulated in the act of planting a fruit tree and waiting for it to produce fruit, and then years from now, having more fruit than you can eat alone and sharing it with people, right? Or another example, think about the values in planting an oak tree that will grow so slowly you will never enjoy its shade, but knowing that it will not only produce the shade, but it'll support an entire ecosystem of living things long after you're gone. There are some interesting things to consider here. It's kind of sad, if you think about it, that we're pressured to create these picture-perfect manicured landscapes as quickly as possible. You need this overnight transformation because you're trying to make your yard look as nice as you can as quickly as possible. You're busy, you're apologizing to your neighbors because you haven't mowed in so long. You have to spend more money on these things for your landscape to make it look nicer faster. It's interesting to consider the pressures that we're facing. What are we missing out on by accepting this as normal, and what can we do to lean into these better values? This is why my last tip is to plant something ugly in your yard. Not something that's going to get you fined by your, homeowners association or make the neighbors complain, but maybe something that will grow so slowly and maybe it'll outlive you. Plant a fruit tree that's going to, make a mess if it drops fruit on the ground and no one picks it up. If you can, add something that probably shouldn't be in the perfect yard. We'll probably all be better off because of it. By using some combination of these design strategies, I hope that this video helps you reach your landscaping goals, whatever they are, a little bit sooner. And of course, all of my videos are for informational and inspirational purposes only. I'm not your landscape designer, because you could live anywhere in the world and best practices are different everywhere. So just remember that it is always up to you to decide what is best for you and your yard. Thank you so much for watching, and happy gardening.